Thank you, Jesse, and welcome everyone. So today I have quite a bit of information to share with you regarding nutrition. I did want to spend a bulk of time talking about nutrition during treatment, including some strategies for managing symptoms, just staying healthy during treatment. I'll talk a little bit about physical activity as well. I'll address nutrition after treatment, and also give you some resources if you don't have access to a dietitian where you're being treated. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And at the end, there'll be some time for questions. So I'll just dive right into nutrition during treatment. So this is a really important part of your journey in terms of treatment. Nutrition can really help you. Eating well when you're actively being treated can help you keep up your strength and energy. It can help you maintain your weight and your body's store of nutrients. Typically, you can tolerate treatment side effects better if you're well nourished. It also can lower your risk of infection. And if, let's say, you've had treatment, which includes, anything from chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery, eating well can help you heal and recover faster. So some tips that I often give out to my patients who are actively being treated, it usually starts with meal pattern. If your appetite has changed, if you're not as hungry during treatment, if you don't have the desire to eat as much, or if you're suffering from certain symptoms like nausea or diarrhea, eating small meals more often throughout the day typically works best. It's really difficult to sit down to 3 large meals if you're not that hungry or if you're nauseous. So I often recommend small portions of food consumed, let's say every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day. You can still meet your nutritional needs this way. It just may feel better. And it's just an easier goal to attain. Eating a source of protein with all meals and snacks is extremely important. Typically during active treatment, protein needs are slightly higher. So we do want to include good protein sources. I'll talk a little bit about what those are, what foods are rich in protein, including animal and plant-based protein. So we'll discuss that a little later. We really recommend that you also eat a variety of different foods in your diet. This will help ensure that you are getting your calorie and protein needs met if you eat a well-balanced and varied diet. And if you have the opportunity to speak with a registered dietitian where you're being treated to help you deal with individual side effects and nutrition concerns, I really think this is a helpful resource. Even if you don't have someone there 5 days a week, I'm very fortunate. I work at a center where I'm one of 7 dietitians. So we're well covered in terms of nutrition services, but not every center is the same. So even if you only have someone who's there a few days a week, see if you can set up an appointment with someone. Maybe there's at least a referral to contact someone. If there isn't, there is an organization that credentials registered dietitians. It's the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and they have a website. It's eatright.org, and you can also search for registered dietitians in your area. It's broken up by location and specialty. So if you don't have that access, you can look at and search on your own through eatright.org. All right, so some nutrition basics, because it's really easy for me to say, oh yes, eat a well-balanced meal, include protein, but what foods are good sources of protein? This is also, something that we have to kind of clarify, because folks get sometimes a little bit confused as to what they should focus on. So having a protein source with each meal is helpful in terms of, like I said earlier, fighting infection. It helps your body repair itself. It helps to prevent unintentional loss of muscle mass if we're getting our protein needs met. So good sources of protein to focus on. If you're eating animal protein, lean animal protein is best. So things like chicken and fish or lean meat, if you're eating animal protein. Eggs are good protein as well, and they're typically tolerated well during treatment. Plant-based protein can also be part of the plan, whether you're a vegetarian, vegan, or just plant forward. That means that you include more plants on your plate, but you include animal protein. Maybe you want to go meatless a couple nights a week. Then you can try things like legumes and lentils and beans. Tofu is very versatile and works well in many meals as well. And nuts and seeds are great, snack items to have in between meals. So these are ways that you can include protein throughout the day. Each meal, you want to think about including a protein source, whether it's poultry, meat, eggs, nuts or legumes. Include some protein source with each meal, and even fats are also a very important, what we call macronutrients. We need them in our diet. They help with many functions. They help furnish energy, produce hormones, and they actually act as carriers for certain fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. The types of fats we want to focus on are what we call unsaturated fats. Those are the heart healthier fats. Saturated fats are linked to, higher risk of heart disease and maybe becoming, higher risk of becoming overweight or obese if you're consuming them in large quantities. So fats that we want to focus on are unsaturated fats like olive oil, canola oil, safflower oil, avocado oil, peanut oil. Also, omega-3 fatty acids found in things like fish and walnuts and flax seeds. They have many health benefits. They do contain EPA, and we have found that consuming healthy omega-3s high in EPA have been linked to prevention of weight loss that accompanies some types of cancers. So if you like salmon, if you like walnuts, if you like flaxseed, I would incorporate these types of fats into your diet. They are very helpful. We have to always be mindful of portion control when we're talking about fats. So whether it's an unsaturated fat or a saturated fat, they all contain calories. So if you're trying to watch weight, still be mindful of your portions. You don't want to drown your salad in salad dressing. A couple of tablespoons is enough, but incorporate these healthy fats into your diet because there's many benefits. Carbohydrates should be part of the meal plan as well. They are an energy source for us. It's the type of carbohydrates that we want to think about when we're making this decision. So carbohydrates come in different types. We have complex carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are those that are higher in fiber. So things like whole grains, whether it's whole grain cereal or whole grain bread or brown rice or quinoa, these are whole grains and they are plentiful in vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Refined grains are things like white rice, white bread. They are not as high in fiber and they don't come with as much of the vitamins and minerals. So we want to focus more on whole grains. The refined grains can play a role in our diet. I'm not going to say you can never have, white rice or white pasta or white bread. You can have them. I would just focus more on the whole grains if you have the choice. Fruits and vegetables are extremely important to incorporate into our diet. We know that there are good sources of vitamins and minerals. They're also excellent sources of fiber. They help to ensure that we meet our what we call micronutrient needs. That's the vitamin and mineral part of our nutrient needs. And typically, the fiber in fruits and vegetables, that it is very good for us, but everyone may tolerate fiber differently. So if you are having any kind of gastrointestinal side effects from your treatment, you're having diarrhea or gas or bloating, you may have difficulty with a high fiber diet. So you may want to choose lower fiber options, or you may even want to cook your fruits and vegetables because they may be a little better tolerated that way. So you have to, individualize your plan. While we know it's good to incorporate fruits and vegetables in our diet, everyone's tolerance is different. So you can always, again, speak to hopefully a dietitian that you have access to and ask which fruits and vegetables are best for you to incorporate and create an individualized plan. Fluids are extremely important. We have to stay hydrated, and especially during treatment. We know that, fluids are vital to our health. All body cells need water to function. But if you're going through treatment and you're not staying adequately hydrated, it may also make certain symptoms worse. Fatigue can be worse if we're not hydrated well. Constipation can be worse. So we really want to make sure we're staying well hydrated and aiming. This is a general guideline I'm giving you here, 8 to 10 cups a day. Your physicians, the nurses you work with, they may give you a more individual recommendation in terms of your fluid needs. But at least 8 to 10 cups a day is a general recommendation for someone who's actively going through treatment. Tips to help you stay well hydrated. You want to try to drink before you're actually thirsty. Once we're thirsty, we're already past that point where we need the hydration. So try to drink before you're thirsty. That means you can sip fluids throughout the day. You may want to keep a water bottle close by. I have one sitting next to me right now as I'm giving the talk. It's a reminder to drink throughout the day, a physical reminder. And if water is a little bit difficult for you to drink, hydration is what I'm talking about. So if you can't just drink plain water, you can think about other ways to hydrate. So that may mean you have, plain water, but you're going to add something like lemon to it or lime to it. Maybe you can even add, some fruit to it, like fresh watermelon, or if, fruit, if your favorite fruit isn't in season, if you want to take, like, let's say cranberry, and add like 100% cranberry juice, a little bit of that, a splash of that to your water to flavor it. These are ways to help you stay hydrated with something that is tolerable and that you enjoy. There's, water content in certain fruits and vegetables is particularly high. So watermelon is one of them, peaches, tomatoes, lettuce, leafy greens. We get some water content out of those fruits and vegetables. So you want to incorporate those into your diet. Broth from your soup adds to your hydration status. There's many ways to stay hydrated. We just want you to be mindful of that, especially for those of you in active treatment. And it can be helpful if you track your fluid intake and share that with your healthcare providers. Because when you come in, these are questions that we typically have for you. We'll ask how much you're drinking throughout the day. And if you have that tracked, it can, help us gauge if you're on the right path or if you need to increase your fluid intake. And if you are experiencing any symptoms, and we're going to talk about this in a little while, but if you're experiencing vomiting or diarrhea, you want to focus on a fluid that has some type of electrolyte in it. So everyone is pretty familiar with things like Gatorade or G2, the Gatorade with less added sugar, but there's also other things out there like coconut water, even Pedialyte for children, we can consume as well. It is fine. It is a fluid with electrolytes. It comes unflavored. You don't have to buy the grape flavor. But even, there's waters out there like smart waters that are enhanced with electrolyte, but you want to replace those electrolytes if there's any losses through vomiting or diarrhea. So managing symptoms and side effects through treatment, you talk a lot about this with your medical team, your nurses, and they'll talk about your medication management for certain side effects. And you want to have that in place first. But in addition to your medication management, often there's little things we can do with our diet to help manage symptoms as well, particularly gastrointestinal symptoms. So I just want to go through some of those tips and tricks that I share with my patients with you right now. General loss of appetite can be an issue for some individuals during treatment. And if that's the case, I mentioned this earlier, changing meal pattern can be extremely helpful. If you are not hungry, I would never tell you to sit down to 3 large meals. It's just not going to work. So I often encourage eating small portions of food throughout the day. That means you may end up eating 5, 6, 8 times a day, but it's easier to meet your needs that way if the appetite isn't as strong as it usually is. You may also want to set a reminder. If you're experiencing loss of appetite, you may not get the hunger cue that you normally get. So looking at the clock as a reminder to eat can be extremely helpful. So let's say you have your breakfast at 9 a.m. and now we're reaching like the 11 o'clock period, anywhere between 2 to 3 hours, you want to try to eat another small portion of food if your portions are small. So start looking at the clock, set a reminder on your phone and just keep yourself on track that way. In addition to the foods we eat, sometimes including calorie-dense beverages, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, like nutrition shakes, whether it's buying a nutrition shake or making your own at home, that can help fill in some of the gaps when we're not eating as well. And you can also snack. Snacking isn't always a bad thing. Healthy snacks, nutrient-dense snacks can also fill in those gaps. So having some more snacks throughout the day at home and at work. If you are working through treatment, it is helpful to have those snacks at work as well. And there are no set rules. You can actually eat your favorite food any time of the day. So if eggs are something you like, if you enjoy them, and you typically have them for breakfast, you can also have them for dinner. They're an excellent source of protein. We just want to make sure you're staying well nourished enough to prevent any quick unintentional weight loss, which is what we don't like to see during treatment. I mentioned, nutrient-dense beverages earlier. So that may be liquid nutrition shakes that are sold on the market. There are so many commercial liquid nutrition supplements out there. It is a good idea to, if you have access to a dietitian, speak to the dietitian about which shake is best for you. Often centers will also have samples. And I have that at my center where we have samples of different brands and we can give you one to try and take home. This way you don't buy a case and then you end up not liking it. You try varied samples, you decide what works best for you, and then you can purchase it. And I have a few examples of, ready to drink nutrition shakes here. Some of them are more familiar than others. I think everyone is probably familiar with something like Ensure and Boost. If you are purchasing Ensure or Boost, I usually recommend the plus version of these shakes. They tend to be higher in calories and protein than the original versions. If you don't really like the milky consistency of like a traditional Ensure Plus or Boost Plus, they do come in clear options. The clear options are more like juice. They come in flavors like apple or berry. So there's Ensure Clear, and Resource Breeze is made by the company that sells Boost. Boost also comes in a very high calorie formula. It's typically sold online. You will not see it in your local pharmacy. But the thing about the Boost very high calorie, it's quite calorie dense. So where the Boost Plus is about 360 calories for 8 ounces, Boost very high calorie is over 500 calories for 8 ounces. So if you are really in need of boosting your caloric intake, something like this 8-ounce Boost very high calorie may be good for you. If you're looking for a product that's organic or has less added sugar, Orgain is a really good brand. It comes in different flavors. It is calorie dense, protein rich. You can find it in places like CVS or Whole Foods and online through the company Orgain or Amazon. And it's a good option. It comes in Orgain Original and Orgain Vegan. Kate Farms is another product that you may not be as familiar with. You won't really see it on the shelves, but it does have an online presence, and we do often get samples from this company at our cancer center, and I know other cancer centers. It is a good product for folks who have any intolerance to certain things, like if you have, severe food allergies or intolerances, it can be a very well tolerated formula, definitely less added sugar. It does come in different options. There's the original Kate Farms. It also comes in a Kate Farms for glucose control for the folks with diabetes, and one called renal support for folks with kidney disease. So that's online. And if you have, if you're working with a dietitian and they have that at their center, maybe they can share a sample with you. Carnation Breakfast Essentials used to be called Carnation Instant Breakfast years ago. They just changed the name. It's very easy to find, usually in the cereal aisle. It's a powder that you can add to whole milk to make a nutrient-dense shake. It's pretty well received by most patients. They typically like the taste of this one. So that's an option for you. For diabetic patients out there, Glucerna or Boost Glucose Control, they are formulas that are made just for diabetic patients. Very easy to find in pharmacies and supermarkets. Nepro is specifically for patients on dialysis. So you can typically get a sample of Nepro at your dialysis center or some equivalent of Nepro. Sometimes centers like myself will carry it if we have those samples, but typically you'll get those at a dialysis center. And then protein powders, which you can buy in local pharmacies. But if you're out there looking for protein powder, if you're looking for a general protein powder, whey protein is fine. You can find that pretty much anywhere. If you're looking for more plant-based protein, like a pea protein, Orgain also sells protein powder that's plant-based. That's an option for you. There are different companies that I often have access to that I get samples from. Undre Protein Powder is a place that sends me samples often. They have different types of protein powders. They have unflavored, it's whey protein, but they also have flavored, like strawberry flavor. They have also one that's a little bit different. They have a chicken soup flavor, and that can be mixed with water to create like a protein fortified chicken broth. So they're a little bit different in that aspect. They have a little more variety, and you can find their products online. But any protein powder is fine. If you're interested in making your own shake and you want to add some protein powder to it, whether you're using just a 100% whey protein or a pea protein, that's fine. I would, if you're going to use protein powder, definitely bring that to the attention of your healthcare team, whether it's, a nurse you're working with, doctor, or dietitian. Some protein powders may be mixed with other ingredients that we may not want you to include during treatment. If it just says 100% whey or 100% pea protein, fine. But if they're mixing it with a lot of extra vitamins or minerals, we would want to look at that before you started adding it to your foods and beverages. So this is a handout that we give out at my center for folks who just want to make their own smoothies and shakes at home. It's kind of a recipe card. So choosing a liquid base, whether you choose whole milk or soy milk or almond milk, lactate milk, or you want to use a nutrition shake as your base, like Ensure or Orgain, then adding to it a protein in the form of something like yogurt or nut butter is great. Adding other nutrients through maybe your favorite fruits or vegetables, building flavor with things like if you have some cinnamon at home or you enjoy vanilla. Fresh herbs can be really nice in these types of homemade shakes as well. And if you need additional calories, what I will advise is if you're using milk as your base or you're adding yogurt, you want to look for the higher fat content. This is really a time where you can allow yourself to have that higher fat milk or higher fat yogurt because you need the additional calories. So if you're using skim or non-fat milk, you're not going to get as many calories out of that. And then you can add things like, a coconut oil, avocado, or a little bit of ice cream for additional calories as well. So additional symptoms, that you may face during treatment include nausea, maybe vomiting. The healthcare team you're working with will most likely have you on some type of anti-nausea medication. If that medication isn't working for you, my advice is to speak to the healthcare team. They can always make an alternate recommendation for another type of anti-nausea medication that may be better tolerated, that may be more effective. So definitely communicate with your team. But in terms of nutrition, this is another time where small, frequent meals work best. If you're nauseous, it's going to be very difficult to sit down to 3 traditional meals. So eating small portions of food throughout the day typically works best. I do advise that you have something. If you do not eat anything when nauseous, it can actually make that symptom worse. So I always think it's best to have something. Dry, starchy foods tend to work really well. So just in the moment, if you have a few crackers around, dry cereal, some pretzels, those type of foods, just nibbling on those can help to ease the nausea, in that moment. So it is good to, keep those on hand. You want to eat more when you're feeling better. Certainly, there's certain times of the day where folks would be feeling better. So you want to, use that time and maybe eat a little bit more. Foods to avoid, foods that are very high in fat or overly sweet foods, fried foods, those are typically irritants. You want to keep it pretty bland. During periods of nausea, things like, that's why we talk about chicken noodle soup because it's pretty well tolerated in the presence of something like nausea. Fluids and electrolytes. If your nausea is followed by vomiting, you need to replace those losses. So you want to make sure that you're drinking some type of fluid and maybe something with electrolytes, like I mentioned earlier, whether it be coconut water, vitamin water, or it's something like Gatorade. You want to include some electrolytes if you're having any vomiting, and just sipping, initially, till you're feeling better. Some folks that I've worked with, depending on diagnosis or where the issue is, they may report feeling full quickly. So maybe you start eating and you find that you become very full. So it's hard to meet your nutrient needs when you get full quickly. So one thing I will recommend, again, small, frequent meals. Setting that time on your alarms and watching how, trying to eat every 2 to 3 hours, put small portions of food. This way you don't feel uncomfortably full, but you're getting your nutrient needs met. You want to focus again on high calorie, protein rich foods. So if you're in the supermarket shopping and you have the option to buy yogurt that's 80 calories, like light and lively, or like a higher calorie Greek yogurt that's made with 2% milk fat, I would go with a higher calorie product because, again, your portions are small. At this time. Fortifying foods is also important. So when you are cooking and preparing meals at home, you can find ways to add additional calories and protein. That may be like adding beans, lentils, or some ground meat to things like soups and casseroles. If you're preparing a hot cereal, you could use whole milk instead of water, or at least a 2% milk. So there's a way to fortify the foods you're eating. And then if you are drinking during mealtime, try to avoid gulping large portions of fluid when you're actively eating, because what can happen is you fill up on the fluid and then it's hard to eat the meal. So during mealtime, if you get full quickly, I would focus on the food first, sip your liquid, but focus on food first and try to drink the majority of your fluid before or after the meal. And engaging in light physical activity can be really helpful. It can encourage food to kind of move through the digestive tract. So even taking a little walk after you eat or doing some chores around the house, engaging in light physical activity can really be helpful in terms of digestion, and it can make you ready for that next small meal. It's a natural way to stimulate appetite. For those who may experience some looser stools during treatment or even episodes of diarrhea, small meals work best here as well, because sometimes the volume interferes with output. So having a meal that's very large may create more output. So eating small meals may just help with your output in general. And this is one time you do want to focus on lower fiber foods versus higher fiber. And the reason why high fiber is good for our overall health, we know it's good for constipation and regular bowel movements. But in the presence of active diarrhea, if we're having a lot of extra fibers, it can sometimes create more output. So lower fiber foods are typically tolerated better in the presence of diarrhea. So just having a little white rice around or a slice of white bread. If you're having a fruit, things like bananas are tolerated well, applesauce, If you're having protein, try lower fat, lean protein. That typically is tolerated better with diarrhea. Skinless turkey or chicken works pretty well. The white meat is pretty lean. High fiber foods to avoid, big raw like leafy green salad. So if you're having diarrhea, it's not the day to have a big kale salad with beans or lentils on top. That's for a day where you're having regular bowel movements. You want to avoid fried foods. They can be irritants. Spicy foods can also be triggers for diarrhea. For some individuals, even lactose in milk products can be an irritant with diarrhea. So I find that some patients will do better with lactate milk or even almond milk if they're having, large episodes of diarrhea. Caffeine is a stimulant. So if you're having diarrhea, it may create more output. It is a stimulant. It helps a lot of folks actually have a bowel movement. So I would lean more towards decaffeinated beverages if you're having diarrhea, and limit your amount of foods that have artificial sweeteners. Things like sorbitol, mannitol, xylitol, sugar substitutes. They are linked to, for some individuals, they can be linked to gas, bloating, and looser stools. So this is not something you want to occur if you're actively having diarrhea. So I would limit your intake of those things. And hydration is key. If you're having diarrhea, you have to stay hydrated and replace electrolytes that may be lost through, some of those electrolytes enhanced beverages I mentioned earlier. Constipation. In this instance, we want to eat more fiber. Okay, we need that extra fiber to create the bowel movement. So, examples of high fiber foods: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, whether it be whole grain bread, whole grain cereal, whole grain pasta, brown rice, quinoa, barley, nuts and seeds. These are all excellent sources of high fiber foods. If you are new to fiber, if you really have never had much fiber in your diet before, go slow. Add fiber to your diet, one food at a time. Don't sit down to a meal that has 3 sources of really high fiber foods. Add one high fiber food at a time, and drink plenty of fluid. You have to have enough fluid in the system to push the fiber through to create the bowel movement. So aim for at least 8 cups of fluid a day, but make sure you're hydrating. And increasing your physical activity can also help with regular bowel movements. Being inactive can make constipation worse. So taking a walk, doing some chores around the house, any kind of light activity is really helpful for regular bowel movements. If you are new to exercise, it is best to speak to your medical team to make sure it's safe for you to exercise. But I do think it holds a lot of benefit in terms of bowel regularity. Taste change can be an issue for many folks during treatment or even post-treatment. So if that's something that you're dealing with, I would highly encourage maintaining really good oral hygiene. That means that you rinse pretty often throughout the day, not just at the end of the day, but try to rinse before and after meals. Focus on a mouth rinse that's non-alcoholic. Alcohol-containing mouth rinse can be a bit irritating during treatment. So non-alcoholic brands like Biotin actually comes in a dry mouth formula as well. That's a pretty familiar brand. But there are a lot of non-alcoholic mouth rinses out there. You can choose whatever brand you prefer, but I would focus on non-alcoholic mouth rinse. If you want to make your own rinse at home, you can actually mix together a little bit of warm water, baking soda, and salt. And then that solution you can use to rinse with, and keeping the oral cavity clean, it can certainly help with any type of taste change. Depending on what your taste change is, there are certain flavoring suggestions I have here. So if you're experiencing more of a metallic taste or bitter taste, sometimes tart flavors, whether it's a lemon or balsamic vinaigrette or cranberry juice, sometimes those tart flavors can mask the bitter or metallic taste. Those tart flavors are also good if your taste is just really diminished. I often hear folks saying that things taste like cardboard or nothing at all, but you can pick up a little bit of a tart flavor or a more pungent flavor. If you're having issues with things tasting a bit too salty, you can sometimes add some sweetness to the meal. So using a little bit of like honey or a little bit of maple syrup can mask that salty taste. Sometimes if you're having taste change, you may do, and protein is an issue. I often hear that like chicken or turkey isn't as good as it usually is. You can think about marinades or gravies or sauces that you can put on top that may help with the taste or the flavor of the chicken or the turkey. So some people may go to something more sweet, like a glaze that's fruit flavored, like, or a cranberry sauce. Some people may go to something more savory, like a gravy. But sometimes, topping your proteins in the right sauce or gravy can help with the altered taste. If you're having a metallic or bitter taste, even changing your utensils may be helpful. Instead of using regular utensils, you may do better with plastic utensils. So while all of these tips are good to try, and I would give them a try if you're having taste change, I can't, they don't necessarily take away the issue 100%, but they can make your foods and your meals more tolerable. This is just a nice image that I got from a book called The Cancer Fighting Kitchen. There's lots of good nutrition recommendations and tips in this book, and they had this image of flavoring suggestions when you're having altered taste. So as you see, if things are too flat, try a little lemon, or try, if things are too bland, try a little that looks like sea salt or a little extra herbs or spices. If things are too bitter, maybe try a little sweet with maple syrup. So this is just another image, just to remind you that flavoring, can really help kind of mask the altered taste as well. Mouth or throat pain or mouth sores. Certainly, if you're having this issue, your team is going to recommend some medication or oral rinses to help with the issue. But certain foods to focus on if you're having these symptoms: soft, smooth, and moist foods are best. So looking at maybe pureed or mashed vegetables, oatmeal or cooked cereal, cottage cheese, yogurt, scrambled eggs, browned meats within soups or sauces, things like that, soft, smooth, and moist. What you want to avoid with any mouth or throat pain or mouth sore: foods like citrus fruits, spicy, salty foods, coarse, rough, or dry foods, tomato-based foods, pickled items. Those can be irritants if you're having any kind of mouth sore or throat pain. Dry mouth can be an issue, due to medications, time of year, who knows, but you really, want to focus on hydration. Make sure you're drinking enough throughout the day, aiming for at least that 8 cups of fluids. If it's hard to drink a lot at once, sip your fluids throughout the day. Avoid salty foods. That can make us a bit more dry. So that's something to avoid if you're suffering with dry mouth. And tart foods, which I brought up earlier for taste change. Tart foods and beverages can help to kind of stimulate some saliva. So that can also be helpful if you're having dry mouth. Rinsing with things that mouth rinses. I mentioned earlier, Biotene has a dry mouth formula. So they have a spray as well. They also, I think, have lozenges. So talk to the healthcare team. They can recommend different remedies for dry mouth. There's a lot of saliva substitutes, moisturizers out there, but I would definitely talk to your team. And when you're preparing your foods, maybe using some extra gravy, sauces, broths, adding more dressings to kind of moisten the food. And avoid alcohol. That can be drying, and even commercial mouth rinses, like I mentioned before, that contain alcohol. Look for alcohol-free. Fatigue is something that can also be an issue during treatment, post-treatment, or just any time of life. We can all suffer from a bit of fatigue. So it can be harder to prepare meals if you're feeling tired. So this is a time where you may want to, really, if you have family and friends who are asking what they can do, preparing a meal is something that they actually can do. And it's a way that they can help out. So what you can do is ask friends and family to prepare a meal. There's an app or an app called Meal Train, that it's an online calendar you can use for those who are looking to make meals for you. They can kind of coordinate on this Meal Train online calendar, and they can each fill in what they're going to make that week, so you don't have a lot of the same dish. So it's a good way to coordinate something like that. When you're actually feeling better, you can prepare extra portions of whatever you're making on the day you're feeling well, and then freeze them to have at a later date. If grocery shopping is becoming a challenge because it's hard to get out to the stores, or you just don't want to be in crowded stores right now, which I get if you're actively in treatment, maybe you can use online meal grocery services like Fresh Direct, Peapod, Amazon Fresh. These are ways to get, you go online, you order your meals, and they're delivered to your door. And then for those of you who really are foodies and love to cook and be in the kitchen, maybe you want to take it a step further and look for the gourmet meal and ingredient boxes like Blue Apron, Hello Fresh. There's a lot of them out there now, but you can get all of the ingredients you need in one box to make your meal, and that's something else delivered to your home. So these can help with meal preparation if fatigue really is an issue for you. If you're fatigued, you want to make sure that you're staying well nourished. So you want to focus on high calorie, protein rich foods. Try not to skip meals or go many hours without eating. That can certainly make fatigue worse. Stay well hydrated. If we're not drinking enough, it makes us more tired. So another reason to aim for that 8 to 10 cups of fluid daily. Healthy snacks in between can also help sustain us in between our meals. So focusing on things that are not only calorie dense in terms of a snack, but protein rich. So whole grain crackers and nut butter, or an apple and peanut butter, or dried fruit and nuts, cheese and fruits. These are nutrient dense snacks that can just hold us over till the next meal. And actually engaging in some physical activity can help increase your energy levels. If you're fatigued and tired, and you're sitting, you can become more tired throughout the day. So just taking a walk, light to moderate intensity. It doesn't have to be intense activity, but just staying active and moving can help you boost those energy levels. So as long as your doctor's okay with it, your healthcare team is okay with you engaging in some light activity, I think there's, again, so many benefits to it. I wanted to address take a moment to address the use of vitamin, mineral, or herbal supplements when you're actively being treated. This is a question I get often from patients. Should I be taking vitamins? Should I be taking herbals? And it's not a black and white answer. The thing is, we highly recommend to focus on food first. Vitamins and minerals can hold a role if you're not eating very well and you really can't get in 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. A multivitamin may be what you need, but we need to assess that first. If you have a known deficiency like vitamin D deficiency or iron deficiency, yes, there is a role for vitamin there or a supplement there. That's a case where you need it. But, we don't want you going out on your own and buying a lot of different vitamins, minerals, herbals without informing the team and having this conversation, because even sometimes natural products that you can purchase online or on your own can interfere with the treatment you're taking. And we really need to review that list of things you're taking to make sure it doesn't interfere with your treatment regimens or other medications you're on. So please discuss this with your team without taking it on your own. That's why we're all here, to help you and guide you. So I just wanted to share that with you because I know it is a concern for many of my patients throughout the years. So some of you may have that question as well. Managing weight loss. For some folks, the treatment journey is very different for everyone. For some folks, weight stays stable. For others, there's weight loss. And for some, there's actual weight gain, which we'll talk about in a little while. But for those of you who are suffering with any kind of unintentional weight loss, and that may be due to the treatment itself, fatigue, the metabolic changes that are going on due to the disease, if you're having unintentional weight loss, you really want to focus on the nutrient density of your foods and your beverages. And I've stressed this a few times earlier in the talk, but this is really where you want to pick higher calorie, protein-rich foods. You don't want to look for the light products, the low-fat products. Please pick the calorie-dense foods and the protein-rich foods. The calorie-dense beverages I talked about earlier, whether it's a shake you make on your own or a shake you buy, they can be extremely helpful as well if you're dealing with weight loss. Setting meal times, scheduled meal times, or watching the clock, as I mentioned earlier, not losing opportunities to get nutrient-dense meals and snacks in. Eating more when you're hungry. I talked about limiting fluids with meals to try to focus on the meal first, having the fluid a little bit with meal, but more before or after, so you don't get so full on the fluid you don't want to eat. Keeping healthy snacks handy, whether at home or work. If you have times where you go to your doctor and you're sitting in the waiting area, this happens to my patients, sitting in the waiting area for, a while to see your physician, that can be an opportunity, for a snack. So just, keeping snacks handy is important. And the liquid nutritional drinks can be helpful too, whether it's over the counter, something you purchase, or something you make at home. Weight gain for some folks can be an issue during treatment, after treatment. It can be due to certain treatment regimens. Some regimens include steroids, which can make you more hungry, resulting in weight gain. It can result in more fluid retention, puffiness, which results in weight gain it looks like gain on the scales. So if weight gain is something you're struggling with unintentionally, for whatever the reason may be, some things that you can do, you can start with portion control. A lot of weight management has to do with portion control. Again, easier for me to say than do, but I will highly encourage you to be mindful of portions. There's a little plate there in the corner. If we focus on a plate that half of the plate is more vegetable and fruit based, and a quarter of the plate is a lean protein, and the remaining quarter is where your carbohydrate goes, hopefully a healthy, whole grain, complex carbohydrate if you can tolerate it. But if you model a plate in that way, that's going to bring down the calories, the fat. That's a way to kind of start watching your intake, and that can certainly help with weight maintenance and unintentional weight gain. Reading food labels is extremely helpful. You have to be mindful of how much we're having, even of the healthy foods. So you don't want to blindly eat out of a cracker box or a potato chip bag. you want to look at the serving size, you want to look at the calories, the salt, you want to start really looking at those food labels. When you're out there grocery shopping or getting ready to prepare meals, you want to choose leaner proteins, fish, chicken. You want to maybe try a few meatless nights, lentils, beans, legumes, tofu. Those things can be all part of your protein mix as well. You want to limit intake of refined carbohydrates. Tomorrow's Halloween, so I'm going to give everyone a pass if you have a few extra candies tomorrow, but that's a special occasion. But on a daily basis, you want to limit intake of these higher calorie, sugar-laden foods. And that's beverages as well. You want to concentrate on calorie-free beverages and limit any sugar-sweetened beverages in your diet. And increase your fruit and vegetable intake. Again, we know fruits and vegetables are high in vitamins, minerals, fiber, but they also are lower in calories. So they can really help with weight maintenance and prevention of unintentional weight gain. Limit the high calorie snacks in between meals. If you're trying to watch weight, you want to concentrate on snacks that are less than 200 calories in between meals. Watch your cooking methods. Sometimes it's how we're preparing our food. So focus on, some healthier cooking methods like broiling or roasting or baking versus frying. You want to be mindful of that. If you can exercise, start with walking. Any kind of physical activity you can do is going to help with that weight management. Include activities that will also help you manage stress. Because sometimes the reasons we eat are not necessarily out of hunger. They may be for other reasons. They may be for emotional reasons like stress. So if that's something that you're dealing with, engaging in a walk or some kind of physical activity can help manage that stress, which will in the end also help manage weight. Exercise, during treatment and after treatment can hold benefit with, your muscle health, your bone health, stress reduction, your weight management. But in general, I want to say doctors, nurses, researchers, we're all in agreement that there's a lot of, healthy benefits in terms of functioning or everyday functioning and a recovery during treatment or after treatment. But you want to speak to your doctor about your individual situation. Is it safe for you to start exercise? What exercise is best? So before you go out there and start anything new, please check with your healthcare teams first. So if you're cleared for exercise, if your doctor's on board and you're ready to get started, here's a few just simple tips on ways to incorporate some activity, some benefits of physical activity during treatment. It can help you improve your balance, lower risk of falls, broken bones, help you hold onto your muscle strength, lower the risk of heart disease, lessen the risk of osteoporosis, weak bones, improve blood flow in your legs and reduce risk of blood clots. It can even help lessen nausea, can help with anxiety and depression. Obviously, if you're engaging in like physical activities with others, friends, or you go into classes, it can improve your ability to keep social contacts, definitely can help with the management of fatigue and control weight. So it doesn't have to be, very formal. It can be walking, and you can start any way that works best for you. If you can chunk out 30 minutes of your day to go for a nice walk, today's a nice day for something like that, great. So then you go for your 30-minute walk, but not everyone can, fit in that 30 minutes. So maybe you split it up into 3 10-minute walks, or maybe that's the energy level you have. You don't have the energy to do 30 minutes at once. So you take a 10-minute walk in the morning, 10 in the afternoon, and another 10-minute walk in the evening. That works fine too. You have to find the plan that works for you. You want to pick exercise also that you enjoy. So if you're not really a class person or a gym person, but you do enjoy going out in your garden or taking a walk or, tennis or whatever it may be, golf, do something that you enjoy because that's the activity you will stick with. You can even, house clean and any kind of movement. Cleaning your house is physical activity that day. You want to make sure that you warm up before you start doing any of these types of activities. A few gentle stretches, maybe even swinging your arms, marching in place. Again, if you're new to exercise, clear this with your physician first. Exercises that can help with relaxation and even our ability, our strength and flexibility. Things like yoga and Tai Chi, they can be helpful in terms of our overall wellness. You can look for programs in your community or at the centers where you're being treated. So at my center, there's a wellness center affiliated with our cancer center or with the hospital itself. So there are programs there for cancer survivors that they can take. Some centers I've worked with in the past, have yoga on site, have classes on site. So you want to, ask around, see what's available for you within your community or at your centers or hospitals. Listen to your body. You don't want to exercise when you're not feeling well. You don't want to push it. So when you need to rest. You want to exercise when you're feeling your best. But I do encourage you to get out there and engage in any type of physical activity that you can. I didn't want to end the talk today without briefly going over some food safety recommendations. I have to say I work with I work a lot with transplant patients. I work with the lymphoma service, and I work with the multiple myeloma service. So my patients are often on regimens that really weaken their immune system. And so I'm a really strong advocate of good food safety. So I just wanted to stress this for any of you out there actively in treatment. If your blood cell counts are low, and you've been advised to follow good food safety, just here's some tricks for you and tips for you. You want to avoid, when we talk about food safety, any undercooked meat, fish, eggs. If you're a sushi lover, I'm sorry, but if you have low white blood cell counts or you're post a transplant, we're not recommending something like sushi. You want to have cooked fish. You want to boil your eggs all the way through. When you're out there buying dairy products, you want to look for pasteurized dairy options. You want to start being very mindful of dates. Check for outdated products in your home. If anything with visible molds, you want to discard. If you have some, treats around the house, desserts, pastries, and they have cream in the middle or cream-filled cannolis, those things should be refrigerated. Just be mindful of that. A few places to avoid if you have some low white blood cell counts and you're on some kind of, we call it a low microbial diet at my center. It may be called something else at your centers, or if you've been told anyway, if you've been told to follow good food safety practice, outside salad bars, buffets, foods from street vendors, those are higher risk in terms of bacteria. So I would avoid those places. For your leftovers, if you make dinner and you put leftovers in the fridge, I usually recommend a 3-day rule that is recommended also by the USDA. 3 days, after 3 days, you want to discard. In your pantries, take a look at your goods. Any cans that you have that are damaged or rusted or swollen or expired, please discard. And then take a look in your freezer. You have any freezer burn food in there, you want to discard that as well. Tips for, handling food when you get it home: wash your fruits and vegetables well. I want you to incorporate them throughout the diet, but make sure you're washing them well. That just means water and a produce brush. You see the image there? That's a produce brush. You just want to scrub the outside skin of things like apples and pears and potatoes. Give it a really good scrub underwater before you sit down to consume it or before you're preparing it. Good food safety starts with good hand hygiene. Make sure you are washing your hands in hot soapy water for at least 20 seconds. That's extremely important. Make sure your refrigerator and your freezers are set to proper temperatures. We do recommend in a refrigerator to keep, the setting to about 40, at least 40 or below 40. And then your freezer should be kept, below 5 at least. When you're cooking meats and proteins, and if you're having issues with your blood cell counts, you want to do you want to prepare your food on the well done side. Have a good working thermometer at home too. That's very helpful. And in terms of safe thawing methods, there are really 2 safe methods for thawing food. You can take it out of the freezer and let it defrost in the refrigerator the day before, or you can use the defrost setting on the microwave. But we don't really recommend letting food defrost on countertops for, hours or days at a time. That's much riskier. And in terms of canned items, other than, checking the expiration dates or looking for dents and things like that, you want to clean the top of the can before you open it up. That's also just a really good food safety practice. I wanted to share some additional nutrition resources for you. These are all available online. If you go online looking for nutrition information, I wanted to give you some good sound places to go. I'm going to first say Leukemia and Lymphoma Society has an excellent nutrition section. The resources there are wonderful. I'm going to show you a resource from them next, but they have good education pieces, everything from nutrition during treatment to after treatment. You can also access dietitians through there as well. And then other places to go to, Fred Hutchinson, they have paired with a program called Cook for Your Life. This is a program focused on nutrition for cancer patients actively in treatment, post-treatment, but there's a whole library of recipes on there, as well as nutrition articles and write-ups, but their recipe book is really great. The recipe database, not book, the recipe database is really wonderful. They have recipes actually broken up by symptom. So if you were suffering from nausea or constipation, what recipes are good for that symptom? It's a really great resource. If you've never checked it out before, I highly recommend it. American Institute for Cancer Research is really a wonderful place to go to if you want to know more about the link between diet, physical activity, and cancer risks. This is where evidence-based guidelines are established. And so this is a great place to go if you want to learn more about a topic in nutrition. You can go there and get sound information. In addition to their evidence-based write-ups and articles, they also have a library of recipes, physical activity guidelines. They set up fitness challenges and wellness challenges throughout the year. So it's a wonderful resource. I've used it for many, many years, and I've always encouraged patients to check it out. American Cancer Society, I know you're probably all familiar with it, but their nutrition section happens to be really good. And I don't think people always go to their nutrition section because you're looking for other things when you're on there. But if you check it out, they also have some wonderful, recommendations, tips. They set up some guidelines every 5 years for cancer survivors and what you should be aiming for and what you should be doing. So their nutrition section of their site is really helpful. Eatright.org, I mentioned early in the program. That is the association that credentials registered dietitians like myself. But if you have difficulty finding a dietitian, you can go to eatright.org and look for a dietitian in your area. It's broken up by location and specialty. And then there's a wealth of information on there on nutrition as well. So you can find some good nutrition recommendations there. American Heart Association also has a wonderful database of recipes. If you're looking for more heart healthy, low sodium options, I would head there. And Eating Well used to be a magazine. And folks may have seen it. I used to purchase it myself. It was a wonderful magazine, but they no longer have the magazine subscription. I think they do a quarterly magazine, but they're not doing their regular magazine anymore. They are an online resource now. So if you go to Eating Well, you'll find more healthy, recipes, ways to add more plant foods to your diet, meal planning and meal prep suggestions. So I think it's a really nice resource as well. And I just wanted to give you some sound, reputable places to go, because if you just hit Google with nutrition guidance, you're going to get a lot of things that come into that. You don't want to blindly, just start looking at every place available for nutrition recommendations. You want to go to places like this that provide sound, evidence-based recommendations. So this is an app that was created by Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, LLS. It's called the Health Manager. And I think it's just such a wonderful resource. I wanted to share it with you before I ended my talk today. So if you download this app, it is free. But if you download it, it is a really nice place to track things like your side effects, so that when you go in to talk to your doctors, if you don't write it down, sometimes you don't remember it, right? So you can track side effects here. There's a food tracker where you can track your daily food intake. You can set reminders to eat if you're, not like I said earlier, if you have decreased appetite. There's a hydration tracker, so you can track your cups of fluid throughout the day. There's a database of recipes. There's some weight management tips, some meal planning suggestions. So this is such a wonderful resource. If you're comfortable with the technology and you like apps, I would definitely look for the LLS Health Manager app. I think it's a great resource. That is the last slide for today. I'm happy to take any questions you have at this time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.